Kia ora koutou katoa. This week, people all around the world are mourning the death of Pope Francis, George Bergoglio. And some will be quietly glad that he is no more. For Francis, living and preaching a Jesus of the outsiders was offensive to those who like the certainty of unchanging fundamental doctrines and moral stances, and who like the church to be separate from politics, offering compassion to all sides and not taking a side. For those offended by him, whether religious or political leaders, believe in times of change and unrest, certainty and separateness is best. And the details of what gave offence? Well, from his choice of living quarters, personal wardrobe, having a papal ring made of silver rather than gold, to making women full members of governing departments in the Roman Curia, with one HOD being a woman, to blessing same-sex couples and advocating for decriminalisation of homosexuality, to allowing divorced and remarried Catholics to receive communion, to his criticisms of trickle-down economics, criticism of climate change deniers, of the death penalty, of anti-immigrant policies, and the ongoing Israeli bombardment in Gaza. Maybe Gaza is a good place to start. At 7 p.m. every night, even when he was very sick, Pope Francis would make a phone call to the Church of the Holy Family in Gaza City. More than 300 Palestinians have sheltered at the church since the war in Gaza began in October 2023. He would ask us how we were, what did we eat, did we have clean water, was anyone injured? A spokesperson for the church said. It was never diplomatic or a matter of obligation. And Francis didn't just make a phone call to Gaza every evening. He made lots of phone calls to people and politicians of influence, speaking out on behalf of the vulnerable and suffering, calling for an end to the Israeli violence and occupation at a time when other world leaders seem to have acclimatized to Benjamin Netanyahu's genocidal brutality or supported it. Some in the queer communities rightly point out that he did not lead the Catholic Church in an outright endorsement of non-heterosexual people or their legal relationships. Yet when Francis, in the first year of his papacy, 2013, said with regard to queer people, "Who am I to judge?" It was, and here I'm quoting Father Jim McDermott, "It was the first time that I ever heard a church official speak, not behind closed doors but publicly, of us, queer folk, in a kind or accepting way. And looking back, I think it was the first moment I considered the possibility that being gay in the priesthood or in life truly was okay. It turns out no matter what you tell yourself or your friends tell you, when you live and work in an institution that tells you to keep your identity a secret and scapegoats you anytime it faces a scandal, there's some part of you that just isn't quite sure whether you are actually good." Note, "Who am I to judge?" was a radical departure from his predecessor John Paul II's 1986 letter calling homosexual acts intrinsically disordered. Or his more recent predecessor, Benedict XVI's reinforcement of bans on gay seminarians. Over the course of his papacy, Francis continued to build on that simple statement, "Who am I to judge?" As with other groups who find themselves on the margins or outcast, Francis has reached out to LGBTQ plus people time and again, in texts, on the phone, in audiences abroad, and at the Vatican himself. Further, Jim McDermott goes on, while the United States government has launched its disgusting erasure of transgender people, Francis has repeatedly welcomed trans people. In fact, in 2023, he announced that trans people can be baptized and become godparents. A few weeks later, he said that LGBTQI plus couples who've been married civilly can receive a blessing from clergy, though not in a formal liturgy. I'd like to note two things here. Firstly, the simple sentence, "Who am I to judge?" radically deconstructs the world of theological and moral certainty and gives institutions built on certainty the wobbles. That sentence throws open the possibility that God might not judge how we judge. It throws open the possibility that those beyond the moral margins, whether they be violent prisoners, sex workers, adulterers, abusers, might not be as damned as we wish them to be. And Francis's actions, like going year after year to wash on Maundy Thursday, with all the significance of that act on that day, going to wash the feet of prisoners, women and men, both underscores that simple sentence, "Who am I to judge?" as well as underlines his deep and abiding compassion for the vulnerable and suffering. The other thing I'd like to note is that the longer the denomination has existed, the more deeply entrenched becomes its patterns and ways, and the more difficult it is to bring change. Even if you, as a pope, use all the authoritarian muscle at your disposal, the 1.4 billion member Roman Catholic Church is akin to turning a supertanker. Change comes very slowly. There are many vested interests, personalities, cultures, and some people are good at patiently navigating all towards that change or doing the opposite. My guess is that Francis brought change first by public actions rather than theological treaties. Actions like a phone call to Gaza, or foot washing prisoners instead of prelates, or on his first official trip of his papacy, visiting a tiny Italian island where thousands of refugees waited in camps. There, the small wooden refugee boat serving as an altar, he led the Mass. In all these actions, he's signaling his priorities and care and purposeful political critique of those who would disregard the vulnerable. And I suspect such signaling brought cardinals and others who were enthusiastic about these priorities to his notice, just as it did with those who weren't so enthusiastic. His other area of change was appointing people committed to the Jesus of the outsider into institutional positions of influence and power, like the 110 cardinals he appointed, who will form the majority in choosing his successor. Francis is immensely attractive to people, both within and beyond the Roman Catholic Church. Commentators And clerics use words like humility and servanthood, which are not incorrect. But I think his actions signal and arise from not so much servanthood, but a solidarity with fellow human beings. He felt for the suffering, wanting suffering to cease, and tried his best to both comfort the sufferers and influence the wielders of policies and wealth that give rise to suffering. His actions weren't so much political alignment, but human alignment. Not religious or Catholic alignment, but a oneness with all who suffer from discrimination, poverty, war, and greed. He was aligned with Jesus, the outsider. The text for today, the same text for every first Sunday after Easter, is that of doubting Thomas. While I don't intend to spend long delving into the story found only in John's Gospel, I think we should remember that a re-embodied back from the grave Jesus was not a means of proof, then or now, of a supposedly historical event, the resurrection. Rather, the story raises questions of meaning and future action. Or as the movie Conclave, I thought it appropriate that I watch it again last night. As Conclave puts it, when one cardinal points to the future saying, "We seem concerned only with ourselves, with Rome," Jerusalem, Auckland, "with this election, who is the leader, and with power. But these things are not the church. The church is not tradition. The church is not the past. The church is what we do next." What do we do next? And my suspicion is that for the community of St. Thomas, they followed the scars in his hands. Now, this is the only text that makes a thing of the scars. They followed the scars like Jesus the outsider did, and Pope Francis, to where people were suffering and vulnerable. You see, literal or liberal or whatever beliefs around Easter don't matter an awful lot. It's what we do next that matters. If we use our beliefs to say we are better than our neighbor, we are of the true faith, or condemn our neighbor, "You're going to hell," then we reap the consequences. If, however, our beliefs lead us in humility to saying most things about God are very subjective, so we might be right or not, and what matters, what we do next, is how we treat scarred people and the scarred earth, then we will reap different consequences. Pete Rowlands, the Irish theologian, makes a similar point when he says that to believe in the resurrection is to participate in an insurrection. More simply, we are the resurrection. Resurrection is something we do next. Rowlands says, "I affirm the resurrection when I stand up for those who are forced to live on their knees, when I speak for those who have been silenced, when I cry for those who have no more tears left to shed." And resurrection is something we do not do alone, but by joining with others. A word about joining with others. One of the more radical things Francis taught and did was to extend his understanding of inclusivity beyond the church's walls to embrace other faiths in a way that was unprecedented. During his 2024 visit to Singapore, Francis spoke at an interreligious youth meeting saying, "All religions are paths to God. I will use an analogy. They are like different languages that express the divine. But God is for everyone, and therefore we are all God's children. But my God is more important to you than yours. Is this true? There is only one God, and religions are like languages, paths to reach God. Some Sikh, some Muslim, some Hindu, some Christian. This wasn't just rhetoric, said one commentator. It was a theological earthquake. Critics, including conservative Catholics like Bishop Joseph Strickland, called it heresy, accusing Francis of undermining Christ's unique role in salvation. Compared to his predecessors, Francis' approach was revolutionary. Benedict, for example, asserted the Roman Catholic Church's unique role in salvation and described non-Christian religions as gravely deficient. Francis, by contrast, leaned into Vatican II's Nostra Aetate, which recognized the ray of truth in other faiths. Francis went further, practicing what he preached through gestures like signing the 2019 document on human fraternity with the Grand Imam, promoting peace across faiths. Francis' statement that all religions are paths to God suggests that all religions, like dialects, express the same divine reality in their own way. He challenged the tribalism of institutional religion, urging us to see God in the stranger, the outcast, even the non-believer. For many stuck in their own brand of theology, this is what's next. And lastly, what's next for all humanity is the survival of our home, planet Earth, this scarred and beautiful place. As Francis said, the earth, our home, is beginning to look like more and more an immense pile of filth. He also offered a prayer, which on this Sunday closest to World Earth Day, I will now lead us. God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. The God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not crown it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the poor and the earth. Teach us to discover the worth of each thing, to be filled with awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature as we journey towards your infinite light. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for peace, love, and justice. Amen. Blessings to you this week.